Good morning, everybody. You tuned in to Cragcore. So today is Tuesday, the 14th of February, 2023. We're getting into it this year, aren't we? The days, the months, they're flying by already. Before we know it, it'll be Christmas again. Thank God for that. So anyway, just as a thought, I figured I'd start today off with the path to enlightenment. You know, just as a thought, the path to enlightenment. Now, I've finished now the book that I was talking about before, Power versus Force, and it's taken me a few days just to kind of digest a lot of the information that's in there, and I'm going to have to go back, read it again, listen to it again on Audible. I tell you what, mind-blowing stuff. I can't wait to read it again. It's I can't wait to go back and see what it is I missed the first time around. What an experience. That book, literally, it will raise your level of awareness simply by just reading the words. Honestly, it's fantastic. Dr. David R. Hawkins, Power versus Force. It was written in 1995. Well, published in 1995, and I've got the redone, like the revised version. Apparently, what the author did was he was reading it for like an audiobook company. I don't think it's him narrating it on Audible. It might well be. I should check, really. I will say this, the guy's got a very deep voice. But anyway, he was reading it and realised at the time that a lot of the stuff, a lot of his own material that he was reading, you know, a few years after the fact, a few years after writing it, that he was kind of changing it on the fly. You know, a few terms, few meanings, you know, a few bits and bobs. He was just saying things differently as he was reading it, and he decided then at that point to go back and, I suppose, technically transcribe what it was that he'd read. So, you know, with the changes there, and that then became the revised version of the book, which is apparently the best version of the book, because what he did was he went back and he fine-tuned a lot of the stuff that was in there, which then helped the book become calibrated at 750 on the scale of truth. I mean, if something calibrates at 750, Jesus wept. I mean, I tell you what, that's very high. When you start looking at the book and you get into it, you'll realise that it's extremely high. Not many things, not many people reach the level 750. I kid you not. So anyway, the path to enlightenment. You see, what he does is he talks about enlightenment in the book, and he says that if you ask, you know, 100 people, how many people of them out of those 100 will say that their goal in life is to reach enlightenment? Probably not many. I dare say you'd have to ask 1 million to find a couple, you know. In this day and age, who's bothered? And he makes that point. But you see, I've got, of course I have. I've got a theory on why this may be the case. I mean, it might not necessarily the whole reason, but part of it. could potentially be this. Once you, and I mean, moving through it, it could potentially be part of the reason why people don't actually start, but once they do start, it could be part of the reason as to why they perhaps don't attain it and end up further back from where they started. Because once you start, say for instance, you reach a level of consciousness in your own self where you start to accept that you need work, bro. You know, you need work. Like, you have to kind of do work on yourself in order to, you know, be a better person, so on and so forth. We all need to do the work. Every single one of us needs to do self-work. It's as simple as that. If you think that you're in some way outside that need, well, then you probably need self-work even more than anybody, than the others that do admit that to themselves. Because everybody needs self-work, you know? Everybody's got to do their own inner work. And I mean, in Zen Buddhism, they talk about the shadow. You've got to do the shadow work. That's literally what it is. That's what we're talking about. That's what I'm rattling on about. Everybody needs to do the work. But you see, once you reach that level of consciousness where you realize that, you're then faced with a fork in the road. You know, you're faced with the decision of going one way or the other. Every single time you're faced with any given situation in life. You think about it. You know, just think about it. Every single time you're offered a scenario where you can make a decision about anything, it could be the smallest thing. Let's just say you are in a queue at a shop, all right? Or let's make it an easy one, because I always because I spend a lot of time driving, I'll make it an easy one. When you're at a roundabout, and we've all done this, I've done this. You're sat at a roundabout and no one's letting you out, so you push out. Or let's just say, on the other hand, you can see that somebody's been sat there for a very long time at a junction. Now there's nothing, this is even better one. You're on a straight road, there's a junction coming onto the road, you can see there's nothing coming the other way. And this guy's been sat there for, well, as long as you can see. All you've got to do is slow down slightly, create a gap, and flash your headlights and let him get out, or her. That's all you've got to do. It means nothing to your day. You're not really holding the traffic up behind because you've anticipated it. You're just slowing down gradually, creating a gap. Now, at the end of the day, it means nothing to anybody else, but it means everything to that person. Again, you're faced with a choice, aren't you? Do you continue, or do you slightly slow down and help the person? And I mean, even smaller, I mean, that's a very minuscule choice in life, isn't it? But even smaller, more minuscule choices, you are given A or B, aren't you? You're given good or bad, the decision to make out of everything. I mean, those examples were a bit shit. I get it. But you can see where I'm coming from. Think about your life. Just be conscious every single day, and everything you do that involves other people and yourself, you will be faced with that decision, left or right or wrong, you know, like good or bad. I mean, what's good or bad is ultimately subjective, because everybody's got their own personal view and perspective on what is good and for the good reasons and what is bad for the wrong reasons. I get it, right? But you've got your own moral compass, and we all technically know, don't we? We all technically know what's right and what's wrong. And you know, that's what enlightenment's about. That's what the path of enlightenment is about. It's through being conscious enough to make these decisions and then make them based on your own perception. And then through your consciousness, allow the process of reflection upon these decisions to alter your perception. And it's as simple as that, and then to raise your perception. Because if you're able to have like a conscious, introspective, or like an overview of what it is that you did and for the reasons why, and how that affected you and other people, you're then able to kind of use that consciousness as a way of either, you know, justifying your own perspective or elevating it somewhat through learning about your own actions and through your own actions. So that is the path of life. You've got to make decisions. You've got to go out there and do stuff. Because if you don't, you're never, ever going to attain anything. Whether it be personal growth or helping others grow, you know, through your own personal growth. Like literally, your own personal growth is that which will feed other people's personal growth. Quite simply. It will facilitate everything. Your own personal growth is like a power generator that will facilitate the personal growth of others. So you don't need to do anything, you don't need to interact, you don't need to step in and do anything for anybody else, necessarily. All you've got to do is act accordingly yourself. And it's as simple as that. But in order to act accordingly, you have to go out there and do things, make decisions, then process those decisions, then allow your perspective to be elevated. And the only way you can elevate something is to accept that it wasn't elevated enough in the first place. You know, you've got to break through the glass ceiling here. You can't walk around in life and think to yourself that you are already at the top and that there's no more elevation that is needed. Because then you're quite possibly at the bottom looking in the wrong direction. So, the path to personal growth, the path to personal enlightenment is one which requires consciousness. And once you start making conscious decisions, this is where ignorance is bliss and all of this stuff comes into play. You know, judge not, or, you know, forgive them for they know not what they do. All of this kind of stuff. Perhaps if somebody's just ignorant and they're unconscious, perhaps they're in a blissful state because they now are no longer, in the eyes of the universal law, responsible for their decisions, etc. Therefore free from their own, I guess, karma. But what is karma? I mean, maybe karma is quite simply consciousness through the conscience. And because a consciousness requires one to accept that we are all connected to the greater consciousness via the microcosmic, macrocosmic viewpoint, if you're then connected consciously to all that is, then how could you be free of the cosmic law, which is balance? You know, so ultimately, the path to enlightenment brings you, once you realize that you need to be on the path to enlightenment, you're already at a level of consciousness where it's almost like self-gratifying. It's self-perpetuating at this point. You're already there. and it feeds itself with more consciousness, which ultimately brings about more choices, the conscious choices that we have to make on a daily basis, which then brings about the possibility for more perception, more perceptive change, so on and so forth. So until, before you know it, you're reeling off into, the unknown, into the beyond, becoming enlightened, But if we are conscious and we're conscious of our decisions, and at this point we start to, say for instance, we decide to start making the wrong decisions, and who cares what ramifications it has on other people, etc. Well, then you are now at the mercy of your own cosmic justice, your own cosmic law, your own balance. Why do you think a lot of people out there, they find themselves in these never-ending cycles in their life? They go round and round and they keep repeating. Perhaps that's got something to do with it. So, in summary, the path to enlightenment brings about, or at least you get there by having a level of consciousness. Then once you're there, you realize that every decision is a conscious one, and therefore you're now responsible for those decisions. And then once you're responsible for your own decisions, you're accountable by them. And then as you're accountable for your decisions, you then have to live up to them or face the consequence. And the consequence either way is going to be enlightenment or the other way. Because if you start making those bad decisions, you start to consciously say, well, fuck it, I don't care anymore. This is too hard. I've not got what it takes anymore. This is too difficult for me. I'm just not going to bother. Well, then ultimately, the consequence to that is a depletion of your enlightenment, and because it comes at the cost of that energy. It will take away from the energy of enlightenment until there's none left, and then you've got to go back. You're basically back at the beginning at that point. It's like a coin meter. You keep putting coins in, and the time will fill up and fill up. But if you just take that time, it will just constantly deplete. You've got to keep putting in. And on that note, I think that's it. I could beat the point black and blue here, and I could kind of go over the point again. But I think I've said what I need to say here, and I hope that you found it interesting and food for thought. And don't be afraid of your path of enlightenment. If you've reached a point in life where you start to think to yourself, I think I need to do some self-work. I think I'd like to have a bit more enlightenment in life. Realize, don't be afraid of it. Just do right, Just dedicate yourself to your own self-work. And don't be afraid of yourself. Neither, not a single person on this planet has never messed up in life. We've all got bad traits. We've all got things that we'd prefer not to have to face when we look in the mirror. Whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, whatever. Usually all three. But don't be afraid of it, man. Because it's all in your power to do something about. It's just the conscious decisions that you have to make. And think about it. Any of these things that you don't like, that you are afraid to face in life, think about how you got there with them. Was it through conscious decisions? It most likely was. And on that note, I'm going to wish love and peace to all things everywhere. This is Cragcore, as usual, signing off. Peace.